Welcome to the Sunrise Project podcast. This is a space where we explore conversations on racism and reconciliation with neighbors in our community. And today we have Sylvia with us. I'm so glad you get to be with us, Sylvia.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah, it is fun to share this space with you. In a lot of ways, because we share a lot of spaces together.
Not
Grants
enough.
Pass Remembrance. Yeah, at least with Grants Pass Remembrance.
Yes.
So not all the rest of our lives.
Yes.
So we know that we share the Grants Pass
Yes.
Remembrance space. You are a close caretaker of that, and you've been so since the beginning. But share with us, where else can we find you out and about in the community?
Gosh, I mean, of course, the first things that come to mind are food because I love eating. Boy, I go to Babes all the time. Good sandwich. But I'm part of the Unitarian Universalists of Grants Pass, so active in that congregation. We do a lot of social action in the community as well. And I work at the Redwood Foundation doing scholarships for nonprofit work. So I'm around. I get spotted a lot. So
You do, and you've lived here for a while.
I have. I guess the other main one would be the Motel Del Rogue. My family owns that out on the river. So that's a good place. If you need a room, come by.
Yes. Now, were you born in Grants Pass or moved here when you were little?
That's a touchy subject. I was born in California. Don't hold it against me.
Sorry, I exposed you there.
Darn it.
Me
No,
too.
it's okay. We can share.
Yeah.
But we moved here when I was 15 months old. So I feel like I was basically born and raised in Grants Pass.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I hear you. And one of the things that I have come to learn when you talk about doing scholarship nights and that being a part of your job, you do then a lot of crossover with students.
Yes.
You get to see a lot of students. So it's been super fun to be out and about with you in the community because it seems inevitable that somebody's going to know you from some context.
It is so funny. I went on a hike the other day and I ran into someone from high school, years ago. And you go to the grocery store and you see 3 or 4 people, or you run into a scholarship recipient and I know their first name and their last name and where they want to go to school and what they want to study. And so it can get a little weird, but I love my job and I'm really lucky to give kids money for a living,
Yeah. What a beautiful opportunity.
Right? Yeah.
Beautiful space to get to reside in.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And you've got some shiftings coming up.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I am starting law school in this fall. I can't believe it. It's been a few years coming. I really didn't know what I wanted to do after graduating college and moved home. Been doing Grants Pass Remembrance work, helping my family with our business. And I'm ready to move into this next chapter. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a kind of chapter where this season is closing off. So you can totally open up to a new one, which is beautiful. And there's grief there. Maybe not as, I'm sure maybe some for you, but some for a lot for some of us.
Oh, definitely.
But it's also, it's exciting.
It's so exciting. It's such a balance,
Yes.
We always talk about that, holding the tension of I'm going to be so sad and I haven't even started to think about all the connections, that I'll miss here. And I know Grants Pass always sucks you back in, it's pretty rare to leave and never come back. So I'm sure I'll be back. But I get to be so grateful and have been shaped by this community and this work and you. So I'm so excited and it'll be learning. It'll be a learning curve. So
yes, indeed. It's, it's been a joy to get to know you and share that space. And so there's a particular sweetness about getting to do this at this point. It's a good gift. So there are a couple different questions that we ask everybody.
Okay.
So it's fun to get to hear everybody's different
I
thoughts.
bet.
So why does race matter to you?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
And I think growing up in Grants Pass, predominantly white, a pretty homogenous area, and going to school and really noticing those instances of racism because they're so clear when they happen, when there are only a few students of color and those are the students that get picked on and called names. I think it sticks with you, maybe more than in an area where there is more diversity and that's kind of more, I don't know. I don't want to say normal, but you know what I mean? So I think it matters because we don't talk about it much here, and that doesn't help. Ignoring it, and pretending it doesn't matter has not served us. And so I think that it matters to be open about it, be open about our history and how we continue to treat people. Because how are we going to change, if we don't, myself included, if we don't recognize, the things that we've done and our attitudes and our beliefs, how can we address those?
I hear you. Now, this one will actually get into a lot more, but I'll ask this as kind of a more surface question right now. Why does Grants Pass Remembrance matter to you?
That's such a big question, Gabby. Boy, I always say this, but I'm kind of a pessimist. I'm not necessarily the cheeriest, most optimistic person. I'm an introvert. I kind of fake the bubbly customer service, right?
Yeah.
But I just feel so genuinely proud of our work and honored to watch this process in the hardest time. I am so glad that I'm not in high school or in college right now. I can't imagine being a student. I know I'm about to be a graduate student, but growing up and coming of age in a time where people hate each other and see their bumper stickers and make assumptions, and it's such a mean world right now, and so to have Grants Pass Remembrance in this town that I really struggle with, really struggle to live here, it's so hopeful and in such a real way, not in a surface level or like, oh yeah, we're just saying that we're trying to make a difference and ooh, hippie woo woo, we love everyone, it's so much deeper than that. So I'll leave it at that. That's my surface level answer.
Okay. Now you have been with Grants Pass Remembrance since the beginning, which I tend to mark in like fall of, oh dear, I didn't think of the year, 2021. Yes, 2021. Yep. And that first year, we didn't do any events. We just did culture setting and talking about like language and all of those different pieces and who were we? What did we want to be? How did we want to do this work? What did that mean? And then the second year we started doing events.
Yes.
But I'd love to hear about your process of, even back before I met you, the getting involved. Like, how did you get connected, and what was that first connection like?
Yeah.
Did it, what questions did you have, or did it feel like a fit right away, or was it not? And I've heard little pieces of some of this, but there are also pieces I haven't heard, so I'm really excited.
Well, I'll be, completely honest. I was very skeptical. I joined the first Zoom meeting. I don't know how I heard about it. I was like, ooh, what is this? Okay. I think probably through my church I heard about it. And my mom is an avid Zoomer, so she'll join any meeting across the country, and it's like, okay, I'll sit on the couch with her and join this meeting, and your positivity was so new to me, and I was like, I don't know, how can we do this work in such a positive way? How can someone be such an optimist and so cheerful and so motivated when I was feeling so, stressed and lost of what to do in a town like Grants Pass. And so, boy, Gabby, I have really come to love you, and I didn't believe how you could have that attitude, and you've totally transferred it to me. So thank you for that. So there's, we always talk about the personal growth and the work, and it's so real. I'm much less curmudgeon-y and, a little bit more hopeful and willing to listen longer, and interact with my community in a less adversarial way, in a more let's work together, So thanks to you. I appreciate you for that.
I'm glad I got to be a part of it. Yeah. I too can relate to, I've really struggled with bitterness and anger in different pieces, and it's been so neat to myself engage with this process.
Yeah.
and that seeking to remain open and to listen longer and to be patient and to be hopeful. Like it's also transformed me in ways that like I'm so thankful for it. Like, and I think part of my own transformation has been because there was a group of us that were working together, and as I do like the close caretakers word. I love that caretakers kind of word. But it meant that we were kind of holding it consistently, and that consistent holding it, that transformation that we've all kind of experienced in that process. I kind of want to talk a little bit more about that. So we've named some of the differences. The for me, that bitterness and anger. For you, what would you name that thing that got transformed? What kind of words do you put to that?
Boy, the first thing that comes to mind is shame. Not necessarily internally, but for my community. Like it's not a fun feeling to feel ashamed of where you grew up, in a place that you love. But I just saw so many examples of hate, and ugliness and violence and racism that it's like, boy, and I didn't really see much opposing that, anything moving in the opposite direction toward community, and kindness and loving your neighbor, that are values that I think we all share, and we all have a different way, seeing them. But this work has really been such a good bridge builder, and you talk about the caretaking. And I think one of the most beautiful parts is to see, even within you, letting go, and me, like being able to, we spent a year working on our words, working on our, our process and our values. And now we can slowly give that to our community, and release that, like, what are people going to think about this? Like, we need to control every aspect of it. And now we're just like, here you go. It's out of our hands. Let's keep doing it together.
Yeah. I never thought about that piece about letting go. Yeah. It's such an interesting thing. So talking with Taylor the other day, he talked about, I just have to always remember to tell people at the beginning that this is hard work.
Yes.
But it is good. And that, like, it's so worth it. But it's also going to be hard because it's there's something about that I think holding tension is a little bit how we've talked about that like it's hard to let go. It's hard to not be in control. But
You're
there's
telling
such
me.
right. But there's such good that comes from it. Yeah. And there's just something about that interaction between hard and good.
Yes, you're right. And this term work, is almost a negative, like, oh, this work that we have to, begrudgingly do to get us out of this, Sundown Town mode that we're in. But I mean, I do know about you. I'm going to say, I don't know about you, but I find it not to be very much work. It's so enjoyable, which as a person who's, pretty involved in a lot of community, committees and events and boards, it's like, I don't always love going to the meetings, but I always love going to our meetings, and every time I make a flyer or I plan something or, we decorate our float for the Boatneck Parade, what it's moving toward, and just having that vision kind of releases that, like, oh, I don't want to do this. I always want to do it, and I'm a procrastinator and I put things off and I don't love, always doing my work, but this isn't work.
I feel the same way. I can't believe how much of it feels like play.
Yeah.
Like, I'm having fun. Right? Like, I can't believe I get to do this. Like, I can't believe, like, when people thank me, I'm often like almost taken off guard. Cause like, but I'm thank you. Yeah. Like, I'm thankful.
I want to.
I'm so glad I get to do this. I can't believe that I get to be involved in a thing that not only I'm thinking of a there's so many things that we've learned along the way. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that I learned along the way, and that I'm convinced of now, is that any good thing that we're moving towards, like that it can and it must be done in a good way.
Yes.
That it's not just the future of good that we're looking for, but that can and it must be experienced now in some way. It doesn't mean that there's not hard. Like
Right.
we do have to name that, like, good doesn't mean comfort
No.
or laziness, or, just that,
Sure.
like, I'm gonna sit back and it's gonna feel good.
Yeah.
Like, there's gonna be moments of work and hard, but like it feeds me today.
Yes.
And it's something that is, I'm so glad to get to be moving towards.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to talk about that a bit too. What are the elements that make this, whether it's like, why is this transformational, is a part of it. I mean, you had highlighted that the vision that we have is so good, and that feeds you. But also the like what about the pieces of the meetings or of the spirit of our work? What about that is transformational, do you think?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, when you say spirit, it's like that really encapsulates what's so amazing about it. And it, this is so hard to talk about, right? Like race is hard to talk about, and anti-racism work, and, Sundown Town work and Sunrise community work. It's, I get a little bit like, oh, what if I say the wrong thing? And I think a lot of people feel that way. And going to, a pretty liberal arts college, a lot of things came up, and we were having these conversations, and it was always, fear and anger and rage, fueled, which is so valid.
Yeah.
I understand those feelings
Yes.
100%. And I can see where in a community like this, people don't respond to that. We don't have a majority, or we don't have a great foundation to be coming at people with, well, you need to change because you're hurting people, or, you are racist, or, your Sundown Town roots are, harmful. And instead, what we do is, hey, look, like, this wasn't okay, right? It's nobody's fault, right? We're not pointing out people or legacies or families. We're saying, hey, this happened and this happened here. And we're still in this community, and people are still experiencing this. How can we move forward together? It's just a different way, and I don't think we lose anything by being a bit kinder, a bit more forgiving, instead of that, like, anger approach. It's just a bit of a nicer way, and it feels safe. It feels a lot safer that we can have these conversations, and we can make mistakes, and we will learn from those, and we'll listen to our community members and our advisory group, and we'll do what we can, because we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. And it's all about learning and growing. So,
A while ago, you mentioned the loving your neighbor, and how there's so many different languages that we might put to that, or ways that we might say that. That's very familiar to my language, as a Christian, and the Bible. Love your neighbor is language that I use. But I really agree that that's something that so many of us see the good in that, and that there's that love is something that we want. Yeah. We want more of that. One of the things in that full first year of culture setting, in my language, the way that I had kind of said it was, I want to do this work with that attitude of loving your enemy, love your enemy, which for me helped ground us in, and myself in, not pushing away some group of our community, but wanting to pull closer. Yeah. Like, I need you too, and you are human too, and I am human, so I'm vulnerable in the same kinds of ways. And how can I be patient and have empathy, and how can I grow empathy for someone that I'd be tempted to do an us them kind of thing with. what are some of the, I mean, I want to just hear what you think and how you'd build on that. And what are some of the languages that you have used and that you hear other people that you're like, oh, because I love getting to the reason we spent a whole year on this was because language can communicate that, oh, we're only talking to this group of people, and so when I say it like this, I'm only talking to this group because you don't relate to that, to the use of that language. So I never actually said love your enemy to anybody else when we were doing that, because I knew that was my language. So I'd love to know how you say that kind of thing.
Definitely. That's so funny that you mention it, because when you said that, I was kind of like, oh, I don't think I've really put love your enemy together with this work, you know? And I think we've also not really had any enemies. You know? We've only made new friends and people that will be our friends later on, you know, when they better understand our work. The first thing that comes to my mind is one of our Unitarian principles is respect for the inherent worth and dignity of all people. You know?
That's even more core than love your enemy, because enemy assumes that there's an enemy.
Right.
And you can almost maintain the enemy and just work on loving.
I love you, but.
Yes. And so it feels, I've struggled with that term, and I love how that's another piece for me with that, like every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Every single person. And so it gets more foundational than love your enemy. I love that.
I just like that one. You know, and it is so beautiful. Nice, like you're saying, to have a ground, a floor that, all right, I'm going to disagree with you on these 5 things. And boy, I really am having trouble talking to you or being, you know, listening to you or having a conversation. And I still respect you. You know, I think we've lost a lot of that, unfortunately. Again, with the hate, you know, and the vitriol, and, you know, read our newspaper, read our letters to the editor. There's a lot of negativity. And okay, I'll go back on what I said, that it's not hard. It's super hard. You know, and one of the hardest parts of this work is that I have to check myself all the time, you know, and remind myself, hey, I'm part of this group and I need to reflect those values, you know. That thought I just had about that person that drove by, reconsider that, you know. What kind of a day are they having? Who do they love? Who are they? And it's so much more than their bumper sticker or their flag, you know. And I think we have to find that balance, because you can't have it both ways, that like this side is loving, but we hate that side. We can't have it, you know, and especially in Grants Pass with the most interesting diversity of political beliefs and, you know, values. We are a mix here, you know, and like you're saying, why would we do this work with a few people? It's not meaningful. You know, we can build whatever we want. We can paint murals. We can, you know, be in the parade and have people that don't want us there. And that's not our goal. You know, we need all of us. And that's what I love.
Yeah. Can you say that that Unitarian, I forget what you called it, but that
it's a principle.
That's the word. That Unitarian principle.
It's in a funny way in my life, like Grants Pass Remembrance and Unitarian Universalism are so hard to talk about. I just feel like I sound like a woo-woo. What are these things that you're speaking about? But yeah, we're not a creed-based faith. We're a covenant-based faith. So it's, you know, how we relate to each other. And we have principles that guide our work. And the first one is respect for the inherent worth and dignity of all people. I think it might be all beings, you know, animals and the earth. But I think of it as people.
Yeah, that's beautiful. There's a deep resonance that I feel with that in my own faith. And as I follow God, there's that, like, the way we talk about it is that everybody is created by God and has that that imprint on them. And so there's this deep value that each person has. And so there's that, you know, we talk about broken and the beautiful, like it is enmeshed in each of us, like, and there is a beauty that we can all hold on to. And I love how I really do think that's the foundation. I think that's a foundation of Grants Pass Remembrance work, is that all of us have that deep worth, and it holds us accountable personally. And I think that's part of where that transformation comes from, and it's hard because it's easier to push people away and say, oh, well, I don't have to think about you. I don't have to deal with you. Right. But that's exclusion. It's like, and its essence is saying, I'd like to get rid of you, essentially. I'd rather have you not here. My life would be easier if you weren't here. And so I'm just going to try to get rid of you. Yeah. And I mean, maybe we're not committing mass murder. As, you know, I've just in a conversation with someone around Hitler, and like, maybe that's not how we're doing it, but I feel like we all kind of arrange our lives and often arrange our communities in ways where we're really saying, I just want me and my people to be here, and I don't want you and your people to be here. And life would be easier if you weren't here. And so I'm not going to say I'm going to kill you, but essentially I'm wanting to get rid of you. And that's what it is. Like, when we follow it all the way to the end, that's what we're saying. Right. And so I think of Jesus talked about, like, you know, if you think about murdering someone, if you think about that, you've done it already. Ooh. And so I tie that in with that piece of, like, no, if we're seeking to, like, make our lives easier by getting rid of some group of people, then, like, we've done it. We've done it already. Yeah. Like, that's murder. Like, we're not any better or any worse. It's almost, it was kind of weird to say, but with Hitler, it's like, at least he did what he said he was going to do. Like, there's almost a weird, I don't know if integrity is the word or honesty, but it is. There's a weird piece of, like, he, you know, like, and we could see it for what it was. Yeah. And so we can also, Hitler's actually one of those people in history that were like, well, he was a monster. We don't do the thing that he does, which is, I think, essentially what our work is saying is, like, no, we are all connected and we are all human, which means I'm as vulnerable to the kinds of things that Hitler did as he was. And that piece of, how am I doing that in my own life? How am I saying, I'd rather the salt shakers just go, like, be gone. Yep. Like, dang it. That's that's the same thing. Yeah. Like, how do I treat them with that dignity and respect, that inherent worth? Was that the term? Inherent worth. Yeah. Like, there's something about that I feel like checks. That's something about that transformational nature of this work. Definitely. Is that thing that holds us all individually accountable, and it holds our work accountable, and it keeps us from those temptations of, but it would be easier to not do it with you. Like, but you matter, and I need you. Yeah. And if I don't yet know why I need you, I'll hold on to like
figure it out later.
Well, like, I'm gonna believe that I need you, and I'm gonna be curious about what is it that I need you in.
Definitely, it's so hard, you know, like you're saying, and it is probably the easier path, you know, to go with the folks that you know. That's our tendency as humans, right? Like, oh, I like you. Like, I feel connected to you. Let's go do our thing, right? But in Grants Pass, that's not going to happen. That's not possible, you know? And it's this funny, you know, while you're talking, I'm thinking, like, we have this community here, and it's almost so strong that sometimes it overrides those divisions in a beautiful way, you know? And it almost makes it hard. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't say, we're just going to move forward with these folks and not these folks, you know? And it's the funniest thing, because I'm moving to Portland, and the people that I've, you know, when I mention it to people, I get cringes all the time. It's like, oh, Portland, be careful, you know, crime, ooh, you know, it's a scary place, and they don't listen to us and don't, you know, listen to what they say. And it's like, wow, it's almost an example of our tight-knit, our rural identity. We have that, and it's that kind of overrides our, like, yeah, you might have voted for this person and I voted for them, but boy, those Portland folks don't listen to us at all, So it's kind of a beautiful, like, at least we have that, and that's kind of what drives us to be able to work together.
Yeah. I've reflected before. I think we've talked about this before. The beauty of this work starting in Grants Pass is that that accountability of each person has inherent worth in our community, because we can't just have this work happen in a big kind of way in our community, because it's that preaching to the choir thing. Like, if we were in a community where there were more people that were like, yes, let's do this, we wouldn't have the accountability in place as much. And so there's a real beauty about this work starting here, because not only can we not do this work without everybody, like, it's not possible in our community. We need everybody, but every community needs everybody.
Yes.
But there are some communities where this work would move faster, but I think that they would have a harder time letting that truth actually hold them accountable. Definitely. Because it would be, but we're able to move forward without other people, so let's just move forward. Whereas for us, there's this deeper, like we get to have that accountability, but we do believe we need everybody. Like, no, we do need everybody. And I want to remember that in the future for myself in other areas where it's easier to move forward, to remember, but wait a minute. Just because I can move forward doesn't mean that, like, are we all here? Yeah. Are we all here? I just, in a conversation with Taylor the other day, he was talking about how, we know in conversations on race that if it's just white people present, that, like, who's missing? Yeah. So we have our advisory team, and that kind of holds that. But in conversations on gender, if it's a bunch of white men getting together, or just men getting together to talk about gender issues, we know, like, who's missing. Yeah. And then if there are a couple other areas, but the one that we were talking about is when there are liberals getting together talking about social issues, who's missing? Yeah. Like, we need everybody. We need all of these different perspectives, because there's strengths and weaknesses in each of them. And so, and there are ways in which, because I do have ways in which even though I live in a conservative world and I'm comfortable there in a lot of ways, I am more liberal. Yeah. And so I have, because my majority context is conservative, there's a way in which it's easier for me to hold on to the belief of, like, no, I know there's strengths here, but I'm still limited in really seeing them. Like, I'm dependent on my brothers and sisters and neighbors that are conservative to tell me what those are, so that we can work together, so that our strengths can build our future. And that's, anyway, it's just, I'm so thankful for Grants Pass being the place where where the Sunrise Project got birthed, because we needed that external accountability of, we can't do it without our whole community. Yeah. But we should say that everywhere. Yes. We can't do it without our whole community. Right. How can we treat every person with inherent worth and be honest to that, and not just say that that's what we're going to do, but then clearly not be caring what other people think.
Or do it in a transactional way, that we only want you involved so we can say that we had everyone. Yes. It's so genuine. Yes. It really is. And that's honestly the beauty of Grants Pass, is we're honest. Like, you're going to know, some of our values and some of our weaknesses and some of our, worst tendencies. We have a reputation, and I don't think we hide it. And there are benefits to that with this work, at least we know what we're dealing with. we know our history, we know our current, issues with KKK and Nazi propaganda and, really evil stuff. It's there. It's open and we can talk, we can see it. And so that kind of gives us this way to be like, okay, we need to all move together with this. And in other places, when people are like, oh, we're totally against all that. It's like, okay, and how are you, what are you doing to move against that? So it's almost easier when we are upfront, kind of like you're saying, we're being honest, about who we are. And yeah, moving forward together. We need to do that. We want to do that. And it's not easy, of course. But I think the word diversity really scares people. And I'm hearing more and more about DEI and diversity, equity, inclusion, and people hear those words and are against it. And in our community, diversity means a lot of different things. The political diversity, the belief diversity, the religious diversity, and the racial diversity is here. I think one of our downfalls is that people assume that we don't have racism because we don't have enough people of color. That's not true. That's not true. We see it in schools. I read it in scholarship applications. I read hundreds of essays where kids are experiencing racism and discrimination of all sorts. So we know that it's true and we know that it's real and we have oral history and examples of it. So I think it's really important that we take those stories into account and can show, okay, it is still happening. And let's embrace our diversity because, a person that we exclude might have an awesome idea, might be an artist, might own a trailer that we could, drive down 6th Street for the parade. And I think we've already done such a beautiful job of bringing in people. Really, it's you, really it's you that you have these bridges and these connections and you're so fearless in, I'm going to go talk about this. And I don't know how you do it, but you do it in a way that people go, yeah, and people that I would think, oh, that these identities aren't gonna be okay with this work. And you come back and say, I had the greatest conversation with, this person that Sylvia probably wouldn't have been able to, talk to. And then you come back and they've donated something or they've, said how great they think this process is. So I really do believe in that shared, we want this. We want Grants Pass to be welcoming. I think everybody does for whatever reason, tourism, money, or just love. And at least we can start from there.
Yeah. I was just reading the book called The Hidden Wound by Wendell Berry.
Okay.
And he defined community in its essence as being a space where every member is, I think he said is not mistreated or pushed aside, something like that. But community in its sense, I guess to put that in a positive light, would be a community in it is where everybody is treated with inherent worth. And I think about how the KKK was like, now we point to the KKK as a separate group sometimes in our community, but it was also how would you say that? Like a product? It was it was just
woven into many.
It was woven into.
Aspects.
It was like the fruit. Yeah. It's the thing that you see, but it was the fruit of this space as well. They thrived here. It was a space where it could thrive. That kind of thing. So in their essence, a lot of what they were saying was not you. It was exclusionary. Whether it was, Catholics were a large target of the KKK in this area, as were Black Americans. But there are more Catholics here, so I think they actually felt that more, or that was more active in a different kind of way. But just that idea of when we're doing this work saying we don't want to be exclusionary, a lot of what we're saying is we want to be a real community. That what the work we're doing isn't just about racism. It's about, we want to be a real community, and a community in its essence is a space that values all of its members. And I was thinking about how the Boatneck Parade, we didn't say anything in the Boatneck Parade about our Sundown Town history, or that the KKK used to walk in the parade that became the Boatneck Parade. We didn't talk about that in the actual parade. We celebrated our community and the local heroes, the people from in all different spaces, nooks and crannies of our community that are doing great work and that we're thankful for. And in some ways, that might seem to not go together, or that might seem even to be like a ploy of like, see, you can, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or a manipulation, like we're doing good things because, and so we can do this. But really it's like, no, like our work is really community work. It's community health work. Like Taylor talks about seeing us as like a community therapist kind of thing. I don't know if I had not, I'd heard that a long time ago when he mentioned it recently. I was like, oh, I hadn't, like we do community therapy, but it's that sense of like the work that we do is really, it's for the health of the whole community. It's not just this side piece. There's also a way in which it's very, it's very deeply connected to us being a healthy community, which is a community where it says we value all of our members. And if we don't know why we're valuing you yet, like we're going to hold on to valuing you, and we're going to figure it out as we go. Like, cause that might be true, right?
Totally.
There might be I don't really know yet. And that's okay. Yeah. Let's keep talking.
There will be something.
Yeah. And listen longer. There will be something.
Yeah. I think, and it goes to that misconception of like, anti-racism work or diversity or, whatever you want to call it is like, that's going to hurt me. Yeah. That's going to take away from me. Or I think it's like a common white attitude of, that has nothing to do with me. Yeah. Why would I participate in that? Or, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not mean to people. I don't, follow them or hurt them. And so I have nothing to do with racism. And Grants Pass Remembrance is kind of saying, but aren't you being harmed too? We are all being harmed. It's a legacy of harm from our Sundown Town roots, that even if that harm is being annoyed about Grants Pass Remembrance, or being annoyed about having to talk about racism all the time, or having to go to a DEI training, if that is your harm, jump in. We can move past it. We can get to a space where at least we're open, and at least we've acknowledged our history, and we agree that we want to move forward. I just, if I could, do one thing and change the world, it would just be to help people understand the root of the work is not harmful. It's helping everyone. The rising tide lifts all boats. I always I've only heard one person say this, but the bigger tent doesn't exclude the people in the middle. If your tent is small and you make it bigger, then everyone is covered. Yeah. It's like, we just have this attitude of, if you get something, then I'm losing. Yeah. When really I'm gaining. I want to see you happy. I want to see you healthy. I don't want people to live in the parks. I want people to have homes. We're all going to do better and save our economy. It's this ideal world that I think the Sunrise community, that's what that, means to me. And I can't do it nationally, but here it feels like, okay, yeah, we're working towards something. Yes.
You mentioned can't do it nationally. And here we can, and I feel that here. I'm curious, in this next season of life, what are the things that you think of like taking with you as you enter not just a different season, but a different community, a different group of people? And there will be gifts and strengths, and there will be strengths and weaknesses in that group as well. the work will look different, but it will continue. Yeah. What are the pieces that you've learned in this process that you want to carry over?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot too, in this period of transition, and writing about it. A lot of my applications for law school were about this work, and from the beginning I was like, all right, this isn't going to be interesting. How am I going to talk about this? What does it mean? And again, it's taken, 2.5 years to figure out what we're doing. I know what we're doing now, but there was a long time where I was like, Gabby will explain it to you. I'm not super sure, but I like it and it's cool and it's great, Yeah. So, writing about it really helps, has really to be able to kind of explain my story and how the work has impacted me, and to be able to take that, because it's so unique. This work is so special, and in this place, especially Southern Oregon, and the resilience that it takes, and that transition for me personally of like Grants Pass, I'm gonna go off to college and tell everyone about this, beautiful and hateful town that I'm from, and hear, examples of the racism that I witnessed in high school and the really awful things, that I've seen and heard and likely participated in, growing up here. Instead of that, it's this, and we're working towards this. I've been putting my energy and effort towards this, and not in an exclusionary way. It's still exclusion. No matter who you're excluding, it's exclusion, And so I don't want to say I'm, like this Grants Pass person that's bringing the good news to Portland, but I think I do bring a really unique and valuable perspective of working with everybody, instead of just, like you said, we don't need you. We're going to do this without you. No, we do. How can we have that, buy-in from everyone? So I'm excited, it'll be a new space, and, like an educational space with discussions. And I think that I can bring a very unique perspective from, thank you, Grants Pass Remembrance.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. One of the things that I think I'm going to keep chewing on from our conversation is, we talk a lot about language, and language that can be just for certain groups of people. And I'm curious about the connection between the word diversity and community. And I think community in its true definition means diversity, because we're inevitably diverse. Like, we are different in all different kinds of ways, and we are the same in a lot of different kinds of ways, and in the most basic way. But I might use that as, when the word diversity comes up in our community, I might tie it into, the real, it's really just about community, and that all of our members matter, and this whole group. And so how do we honor that? How do we let that hold us accountable? How do we live up to that word community and what that really means? And yeah. Is there anything else that you would want to get to say, or it's on your mind still? Or
That's beautiful. I'm going to be thinking about that too. And I think in a funny way, and when I'm thinking about it, it's almost like you mentioned earlier, manipulation or a ploy or something. It's almost like we're doing diversity and we're doing inclusion and we're doing equity, but we haven't called it that.
We haven't.
Because it's so much more.
It is.
We're practicing these things that I guess you could put them into those words. Mm-hmm. But the way that it turns out is, 10 different community groups getting together and celebrating Juneteenth, mm-hmm. or coming to Martin Luther King, and meeting people where they are and bringing them with us. Not to say, oh, haha, we tricked you, that was DEI. It's like, right. Hey, look how wonderful this is when we do agree on these things, and we do have a common value, and we just have so much misunderstanding and misinformation that we're working through to get us all on that same page.
Yes. That's so much of it. That we do all have this common value. Yeah. We have community. We all care about community.
We love Grants Pass.
We love Grants
That's
Pass.
our thing.
We love Grants Pass. And so what does that look like? And how do we listen longer when the way that you're talking about it sounds a bit different? And how do I let your inherent worth hold me accountable to listening longer and knowing that there's something there, I need you, and what's it gonna be? Yeah. What do you have to like, what can we share together?
Yeah. And the beauty of when people feel that, you need me.
Yeah.
I can do something, like I can feel important and valued. Like that's another awesome part of our spirit is we do need people, and we tell them like, you're awesome. You know, we couldn't have done this without you. And it's like, you are amazing, Gabby. You are your own, like, wow. And you transfer that to so many other people. It's not like you're the exception that can do all the work by yourself. That's why it's so amazing that I dropped the ball and I need to transfer it to you, and you're going to take it. And like we've been talking about grace, you know, it's not scary. It's like you just have to relax, and it's not what we're used to. You know, at work, at, you know, other places, it's like, if I don't do this, someone's going to be mad at me. Or if I do this wrong, like something's going to happen. And we're not like that, you know?
It's so beautiful. Yeah. I can't tell you, there's that piece of like the awesomeness that you hold, Sylvia, you like in getting to know you, and that of getting to work together in this together, and together in this community together, and together with our other caretakers together. Like there's that both and piece. It has just been such a joy and a life-changing experience for me. Like I am so glad I have gotten to know you. And
me too. I can't tell you, you know, yes. There are no words.
Yes.
It's just,
there are no words. Yeah. So thank you for sharing this space together.
Thank you. I'm so glad we got to do this.
We did.
It worked out.
It sure did.